Hey, let's talk about owning a production studio.
Let's talk about owning a production studio.
Maybe you're wanting to start a photography studio or a creative content studio, or maybe you already have one and you're just trying to take it to the next level. I'm going to talk about some things that I wish I would have known a few years ago whenever I opened up this studio. And yeah, let's do it. First of all, owning a studio is fun. It's a creative outlet, right? And I'm a videographer and a photographer, but this business, this studio, is another creative outlet, right? It's another piece of art that I am creating in the form of a business, and especially in the form of a money-making business. So that's kind of the whole point of making a business. But a lot of businessmen are artists in their own way. You know, I think a lot of times when I was younger, I would always just think that artists were artists and businessmen were businessmen, right? Or entrepreneurs were just entrepreneurs. But entrepreneurs, their art is their business, and that's kind of the beauty of it. So opening up this studio has really shown me that entrepreneurship is just another form of art. So first of all, let's check this out. Do we like white? Do we want to change this? Look at that, there we go. Blue always looks good. Cool. So the first thing I want to point out is that when you open up a studio, it will become your full-time job. Even if it's currently just a side job to your main photography gig or your main job, whatever it may be, if you're opening up a studio on the side, it will very quickly become your main thing, right? You will obsess over it. You will love it so much that you'll work on the weekends, you'll work at night, you will spend extra time doing it, whether you like it or not. Even if you don't enjoy it, you're going to have to do it full time in order to keep it afloat. So, especially if you're wanting this to be its own entity, like its own money-making endeavor. So instead of it just being your studio that you use and kind of make money on the side, if you want your studio to be its own thing, where it's making its own money and paying you a salary based on that income, it will 100% be your full-time job. So be prepared for that. I've had a video production company for a few years now, and that's what allowed me to open up this space. I had enough capital saved up to open up this space. And, you know, I was treating it, when I first opened up, I was treating it kind of like a side gig, right? This was the studio next to my full-time job as a production company owner. After launching it, after a few months, I realized that this studio is going to be my full-time job. So I have kind of a full-time job as the studio owner and a part-time production company owner now, right? So it's kind of flip-flopped. It started off production company, studio, and now it's studio production company. So just be prepared for that. Be prepared to put in the time, put in the effort. But I'm not complaining. You know what I mean? Like, my end goal is to make this my full-time job, right? To own the studio, to have it be its own thing. I love owning an agency, right? Let me rephrase that. I like owning an agency, and I like dealing with clients and creating videos for them and stuff like that. But I'm looking forward to the day where this is making enough money to where I don't have to do my commercial video production agency. But right now we're not there. So I kind of have a full-time job and then a part-time job on top of that. Another thing I want to talk about is, yes, you have to put in the hours, but also you need to hire help. So I hire a studio manager. Her name is Taylor. She does everything. She does all the work. She handles all the back end. If people send an email and they want to book the studio, she deals with that. She deals with the email. She figures out what time works for them. She deals with getting their certificate of insurance. She deals with payment. She deals with all that stuff. We're in communication throughout the day, of course, for various things, right? And she'll ask my opinion on some certain bookings if it makes sense. But at this point, we've been working together for years. She understands that there are things that I don't even really need to know about. She'll just book people without me even having to provide my input, which is great. She does all that work, so I can kind of manage the greater vision of the company, right? I can do creative stuff. I can kind of do business development and stuff like that. So she definitely helps with the back end. I also have somebody help me with marketing and hosting events and stuff like that. So I definitely don't do everything on my own. This would not be possible if I was the one pulling the strings, doing everything on my own. I like to lead the team and obviously lead the direction on that, but I'm not the one doing everything. This business would fail very quickly if I was having to do everything. So there's a tip: get help. Find somebody you trust, and yeah, that will make your life easier. When you hire somebody, there will be like a few weeks where you're thinking to yourself, why did I hire this person? I'm having to teach them everything. I'm having to do all the work and they're just watching me. And now they're doing like half of the work, but I'm still doing a lot of the work. So there's a few weeks that are a transitional period where they are going to simply watch you do the stuff, and they will learn from you and you will slowly teach them. But eventually, after a few weeks or maybe even a few months, they will be able to take that job 100% on their own. And then they'll be able to apply their expertise. What are they good at that you're not good at? And they'll be able to apply that to the job and make it that much better. Taylor doesn't just do what I could do, right? It's not like she's just doing the job that I could do. She is doing the job much better than I could. She is very detail oriented. I'm very creative oriented, right? So I don't touch my email inbox. There will be days that go by that I forget that email exists. So if I didn't have Taylor, this place would fall apart, right? Because she is better at that than I am. So when you hire somebody, there will be a learning curve, there will be a runway before they can fly, but eventually they will be able to fly, they will take the job, and they will do a better job at it than you could. So hire help. Another thing, location is so important. If you have the greatest studio in the world, you got all the upgrades, you got all the things, but if you're in like the middle of nowhere, no one's going to use your studio, right? No one's going to run across it. No one's going to drive multiple hours to use your studio. I say that. I say no one. Maybe some people will, but it's not going to be busy enough to really maintain a proper business. So I obsessed over the location when I was first opening up this place. Like even a year before I signed this lease, I knew that the lease at my old place was going to come to an end eventually. So I was looking at places. I was looking at LoopNet, looking for any kind of space that would make sense for a photography studio. So I was obsessing over it. I feel like every day I was spending like at least half an hour looking at LoopNet to see if there was any new properties that came up. And I was also looking at existing properties just to see what they cost and just to see like, okay, for a 2,000 square foot facility at this part of town, this is what it costs. And then I could kind of cross-reference that across, across the whole city there. So I obsessed over the location. I knew I wanted it to be close to where people live, obviously, but not like directly in the hustle and bustle, because we do have to provide parking and ease of travel. So we're close to the highway. We have a huge parking lot. We got a garage door. That was important as well. We also have a warehouse that is air conditioned. In Texas, you cannot have a photo studio in a warehouse that's not air conditioned. That's just not how it works. You will melt. You will literally die. Your clients will come and they will cook alive. So having an air conditioning in the warehouse was top of the list. So I obsessed over location and I obsessed over the building. When I found this place on LoopNet, I saw the blueprint and I thought, okay, I could maybe make this work. The warehouse is air conditioned. The warehouse is big enough without being too big, right? It's not like it's like a 10,000 square foot warehouse and then I'm going to have to make that into a studio. That'll work for some people, but that's not what I was looking for. So it's big, but not too big, air conditioned. It's got a spot up front for various things. So it just kind of worked perfect. It was just off the highway. And I took that blueprint and I started virtually staging it. Right? I was like, okay, I can build a 20 by 20 cyc wall and then I can have like a black studio over here and I can put desks over here and a conference table here. And like, I was kind of outfitting it before I even saw the space. I hadn't even laid eyes on the space yet. I was just outfitting it before I saw it. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to go look at this space in person. So I did. And I showed up with the listing agent. And it's kind of funny, when I walked in, the electricity was off. So the lights did not turn on, but we opened up some windows and I turned my flashlight on. But I already knew the space. I already knew the layout of the space, right? Because I had obsessed over the blueprint. So it was really just a matter of taking a look at the space and the condition of everything, the walls, the ceiling, the floors, making sure that it had good bones. And it did. And so I Boy, this is taking me back now. I'm having to think about all the details that I went through. That was a huge process. I remember every night on my back porch, I would have my laptop and I would obsess over it. I would do in Photoshop and I would look at the numbers as well, because it's not a cheap space. So I was looking at how much I would have to pay, and then how much I would have to make, and then how much of that would have to go to like insurance. And so I had a spreadsheet that I made, and I was obsessing over the numbers. I was looking at it, and I got to the point where I was like, I can't look at numbers anymore. I have spent hours looking at these numbers. I know them by heart, and I'm going to drive myself crazy. So it came to the point where I just had to take the plunge, right? The numbers kind of made sense. It was going to be a stretch, but the numbers kind of made sense, but I just had to take that leap of faith. And I finally did. And now here we are 2 years in, and we're making it work. So we moved in, and we had to do a lot of renovations. And so that kind of leads me to my next point, which is it's going to cost you some money to get up and running. So, you know what? Let's do this. Let's change some colors here. I'm getting tired of looking at blue. I'm sure you are too. There we go. So let's talk about money. It's going to cost you some money to start a studio. Even if you have a small studio, it's still going to cost you some money. My studio is about 3,000, just shy of 3,000 square feet. And when we moved in, we had to do a lot of renovations. We ripped up the carpet, we knocked down walls, we added some walls, we added new flooring, we built the cyc wall, we built the grid. We did a lot of renovations right up front. And I knew it was going to cost money, but it cost a little bit more than I had initially anticipated. And again, I had been obsessing over the numbers, so I thought I had everything down set. But there was always things that would come up and be like, oh, this is an extra $500. Okay. This is an extra $1,200. Okay. This is an extra $5,000. Like, it would add up very quickly. So just know that when you first start a studio, it's going to cost you some money. So have a lot of money set aside. Obsess over the numbers, like I said, but then just to be safe, add an extra 15% on top of that. And don't blow through your cash immediately. So what happened with me was I signed a 5-year lease here, and the landlords provide what's called a tenant allowance, which means if you invest money in upgrading the space, they will credit you that money. So for me, on my lease, I invested $30,000 on updating the space, and that's $30,000 cash, which is very scary. So you put down that money, you build the space, you do the floors, you do the walls, you make the space better. And then the landlord says, okay, that's great. Show me your receipts. We got all your receipts. Here is a $30,000 credit. So I didn't have to pay rent for a lot of months right at the beginning, right? But I'd blown through my cash. So there was a lot of scary moments there those first few months. And your space might be smaller than mine, so you may not be spending as much money as me. But it's still going to cost you money. So be prepared for that. You're still going to have to buy couches. You're still going to have to redo the paint. You're still going to have to like invest in the space. I can't see a scenario where you just rent a space and it's perfect. And you're like, great, I'm off to the races. I got a business, right? You're going to have to invest in money. Even the digital side of it. We had to get a logo. I had to pay a designer to make the logo. We had to redo our website. We had to sign up for more software to manage the booking and to manage the website and to manage all these other subscriptions. So that money added up pretty quickly. So just be prepared to spend some money, right? Obviously, businesses cost money. Nobody, I don't think anyone's delusional enough to think that businesses don't cost money. Everyone knows that businesses cost money. And you're probably not going to profit, and you're probably not going to recoup those losses for quite a while. For me, it was about 1.5 years before we had a profitable month. I'll never forget this. This was in June, so it was about 1.5 years after we'd opened, and Taylor sends me a monthly report on our income. How much money did we make? What areas we're bringing in the money, so I can kind of assess that. And June was the first month that the number was more than our monthly rent. And I remember seeing that and I thought, oh, thank the heavens, right? Like, it wasn't a lot of money. It wasn't paying our salaries, but it was paying the rent. And so that showed me that this is working. Even though we're definitely not flying up in the clouds yet, still we are increasing our income every single month. And now we are a little bit positive. So that showed me that it's going to work. And ever since then, we've been progressively getting a little bit better with every single month. So be prepared to not immediately profit money. Let's change the colors and go on to the next one. Beautiful. I like that color. That's a great color. On that note, you have to think long term, right? A lot of times I get stuck in my head only thinking 1 or 2 or 3 months out. But with a business, you have to think long term, right? So I'm thinking 5 to 10 years out. That is a very long time to think about, right? 10 years from now, my kids are going to be maybe out of the house. That's a long time. It's hard to think that far out. But with business, you have to. Okay, you have to have a big vision in order for that to be your driving goal. And I have big goals for this studio, huge goals. I want to expand it to a music studio. I might not even share this in the video because these are like so big of goals that I'm not even really starting to implement things yet. But I want to make this a music studio. I want to make this a full-fledged creative school where people can come and learn how to use a camera. They can come and learn how to act. They can learn, anything that you would want to learn in this industry. And eventually, I would love to sell the company. That's my big goal. 10 years down the road, I'm going to sell the company. Right now, we're not there. We're barely profitable right now. Nobody's going to want to buy a company like that right now. But in 10 years, you never know. There's a famous quote. I want to say it's attributed to Bill Gates. I could be wrong on that, but the quote basically says, people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I think that's so true with business. A lot of times I think, we're going to implement this plan and in 1 year, we're going to be making $1 million. That's wrong, right? It's impossible to do. Not impossible, but it's very naive to think that that's going to be possible. But it is very easily possible to think, I'm going to implement this plan and iterate month after month and year after year, and in 10 years, we're going to be making $10 million, right? So that's why you have to think long term. Thinking short term is fun. Thinking long term is valuable. Like I said, you know what? Let's go white. Let's do it. Let's go white. By the way, the lights I'm using are Godox lights, and I'm simply using the Godox app here. So you can select what light you want. Like, let's do that light. And then you just go in here and you pick what color you want. It's great. This is like the best thing. When people walk in, they're always like, whoa, this is a cool studio. And I'm like, oh, just you wait. Here's an iPad with things that you can touch. People love it. My kids love it as well. There's another fun feature. Look, while we're on the topic, there's another fun feature that responds to audio. Hello, isn't that cool? Anyways, let's just go to white, bring it home. So I've been here 2 years, and I can say that owning a studio is stressful, right? I'm not going to ignore the fact that it's very stressful. Owning a business, I think in general, is stressful. And this is the first larger scale business that I've owned. And what I mean by that is that I have a lot of overhead. A lot of money goes out the door every single month to keep the doors open, to keep the AC on, to keep the lights on, to keep me insured. I have to pay taxes. Don't get me started on taxes. So there's a lot of overhead. So this is kind of the biggest business that I've ever started and the biggest business that I have ever tried to grow. And that is very stressful for me. In the past, I was a freelancer and I made money, and then I grew that. So I had a small team that was basically helping me be a freelancer, and that was great. But now that I have this, it is a whole lot more stressful. So it's hard to get away from the stress. I think there's a lot of things in my personal life outside of these 4 walls that I implement in order to manage that stress. You know, I try to work out every single day. I try to meditate often. I cut out alcohol from my life. I cut out a lot of things that were just adding a little bit of stress here and there. And that really helped. So, and again, I'm not here to like give a whole mental health talk or like, I'm not a self-help guru or anything like that. But just know that if you do start this business and if you do start your studio, first of all, good for you. Congratulations for taking that step. It is a very big and bold step. And a lot of times you have to take that step on faith. And you have to have faith in the process and faith that it will work. But just know that there will be a lot of stress involved. So prepare for that. I'm not saying you can't do it. And you never tell yourself that you can't do it. But just be prepared. So, I remember early on whenever we were out of cash and the first of the month was coming up and I didn't have enough cash to pay my people. I had salary employees at the time. So the first of the month was coming up, so I had to pay them. I also had to pay my rent, and I also had to pay my mortgage. And I didn't have enough cash to cover any of it. And I thought, this is the end. I opened up this studio, and I'm only a few months in, and I got it looking good and all that stuff, but I blew through all my cash. And it was a very stressful season of my life. And I wasn't sleeping. When I would lay in bed, I would just wake up and just be breathing heavily, and like I was living a nightmare essentially for a short season there. It wasn't super prolonged, but I remember that feeling very well, and I use that as fuel because I never want to feel that way again. And I especially never want my family to have to feel that way. Like me as the business owner and the provider of the family, if I blow through all the cash and I do things wrong, then I'm screwing my family over. And I do not want that under any circumstance. I don't want that. So I kind of use that low season as fuel to make this thing work. Okay. And again, that's not to say that stress is not a thing on a day-to-day basis. It very much is, but it's worth it. Okay. It's worth it. If you're a creator and if you're an artist, you have something inside of you that's driving you crazy. And that's an idea. That's a spark, and it's an idea because we all have it. Okay, that's how this started, was just a spark, and it was driving me crazy. So I had to pursue it a little bit, and then I pursued it a little bit more, and I pursued it a little bit more, and now here we are. And I am living proof saying that it is worth it. It's going to be stressful, but it's worth it. So that's it. Anyways, that was a rant. Starting a business is fun. It's exciting. It's stressful, but it is rewarding in the end. Let me know if you have any questions. I would love to go alongside you during your journey of opening up a studio. I'm an open book as always. So any tips I have, I'm happy to give them to you. And thanks for watching. I'm very proud of you for taking this step, or if you're even just thinking about it. Also, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you. Give it a like or a subscribe. I will try to make more content like this for studio owners. I have a podcast talking with other studio owners as well from different types of studios, whether it be photography or videography or even a virtual production studio or a podcast studio. And I kind of ask them about their experiences in owning a studio. So check that out. You might get something out of it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Let's talk about owning a production studio. Let's talk about owning a production studio.